Sunday at an earlier time. 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I wouldn't be surprised if nobody showed up, but we'll hope that someone remembers we're changing to 7. But we'll put it there for the playback anyway if nobody comes. But I'm not being negative. Like when things change, a lot of people forget, they're not aware of it. In fact, we don't have Glenn here yet.
Even Glenn didn't show up.
Even Glenn. So.
He's having his wind down time.
Yeah.
Wind down.
We should have told him that we'd have some sake here for him waiting. That would have gotten him here on time. Well, you know what? It's just us 3 Musketeers. Woo!
Woo!
The 3 Musketeers.
I love it. Well, the topic for tonight is the privilege of freedom, Keepsake, a horse with no name, which we're looking forward to. This in the ongoing series that Glenn has written so eloquently on the privilege of life. And another way to say it, with all these topics that we have discussed, the idea of living a life in love, and what does that look like? More practical terms. We talk a lot about philosophical and spiritual concepts and psychological things, and so we wanted to, after all of that, some of them pretty heavy topics, we wanted to kind of switch gears a little bit. And I'm sure we're all asking the question, that all sounds good, but how do you actually apply this to your life? What does that look like? So Glenn has done this right up. The privilege of freedom, Keepsake, a horse with no name, which happens to be one of my favorite songs. Look, people are showing up. Hey, Debbie S. Good to see you.
Hey, Debbie.
Debbie got the notification.
Jamie's here.
Oh, Jamie. Look at that. All right. Yeah, well, somebody's going to be here tonight, even if we have 2 people. That's good enough. 2 very important people, Debbie and Jamie.
Yes.
Well, and of course, everyone on the panel. Well, there's Glenn. All right. The whole gang's here now. Good. All right. So now that everybody's here, let's do the introductions. For those listening for the first time, my name is Jason. I usually go by Crips, but that's okay. And I am the host of the broadcast. But as always, I could not do it. It would not be the same if I just took 2 hours and just talked on my own topics. It wouldn't be True Story Live. I couldn't do it without my panel, and we'll start with the writer of the write-up, our friend Glenn from Australia. Glenn, take a minute to say hello to everyone, if you would, sir.
Hi, everyone. Apologies for being late. Yeah, talk about running. Oh.
Yeah. We understand. It's a time change, it's an adjustment.
I think when you are a carer for a person with a disability, time is not that relevant to them.
Right.
Here.
Yeah. Well, Nez with a young child.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, she had a little fun tonight too, because the little one wasn't quite ready to go to bed. that happens.
Welcome to parenthood. That's what's happening.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And what did you say, Naz, about nap? I thought that was hilarious.
Share isn't it funny how we get older and the kids when they're young, they don't want to take a nap. Well, I would love to be able to take a nap. When do I get to? When's my nap time?
That's right. When do I get to go to bed? It's true. So we changed the time from 8 p.m. to 7 p.m. because for me, after a broadcast, I'm a little wound up, and I've started this new job. And so I asked everyone if it was okay if we changed the time so that I had a little bit more wind down time. So this fits into what Nez is discussing, because over the past 2 weeks, since I've had to get up earlier, Jen and I have been going to bed sometimes, sometime between 9 and 10 p.m., which for us is ridiculously early. Before that, we didn't have to go to bed that early. So
it's more like 11 or 12.
Right. It's an adjustment. And then sometimes when Jen and I first moved in here, I had been alone for so long, and I had oftentimes stayed up till 2, 3 in the morning. I remember Glenn, because the time's different for him, obviously, he would send me a message and I would respond right away. And he'd said, why are you still up? Like it's late for you, isn't it? I was like, well, yeah, it's like 2 in the morning. Oh, the craziness. All right.
Well, you should be here, Crips. If Sandra's not in bed by 7, I'd have to try to pick her up, which is not possible.
Right.
So yeah, 7 o'clock.
Right. 7 o'clock.
We all have to make adjustments, don't we?
We do. We do have to make adjustments. And, that's kind of like the topics that we're talking about, making adjustments and understanding gratitude. And, tonight's particular topic is privilege of freedom. And there's some really great questions to look forward to, guys. Can't wait to get to it. When I saw the write-up last night, I messaged everyone and said, the questions are so good, I want to answer them right now. The other day, even Glenn was putting some stuff up for conversation just in the regular chat, and I started to answer one of his last questions. He said, just save it, because I'm going to use it for the show. So I was like, for the broadcast. I was like, okay, well, that's such a great question. Anyway, yeah, all right. So Glenn, we're glad you're here. Thank you for the write-up. A lot to look forward to. Appreciate that. Appreciate you starting early too. All right. Not to be undone, certainly. Let's hear from our friend Marisa from the Nez Lover channel. Marisa, take a minute and say hello to everyone, please.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to True Story Live, here an hour earlier, but still on Sunday.
Yeah.
I hope everybody had a wonderful weekend, and I am looking forward to getting hip deep in tonight's topic, again given to us by our dear friend Glenn in Australia. Please do take a moment to share this stream out on your social media if you're so inclined, and I might be dropping a few links during the course of the stream, including the stream that both Crips and Jen joined me for this last weekend. So keep a lookout for that. Thank y'all for being here, and I can't wait to get started. Woo!
Yeah, and when she posted the link from last night, I'm putting a poll out there. So the poll is, who made it awkward? ? Who made it awkward?
Hashtag who made it awkward.
That'll give you guys a little preview of a portion of the program. No, it was wonderful, and a lot of good topics and things like that. So please take the time to listen to it. Little abbreviated broadcasts. Nez usually goes at least 2 hours, sometimes longer. It was a little bit shorter than that, but yeah, give it a listen. Okay. And last but certainly not least, my amazing wife, Jennifer. Take a minute to say hello to everyone, if you would, madam.
All righty. Hey, guys. Great to see you. It is a little strange starting an hour earlier, but we've been doing some major adjusting the past 2 weeks, so why not add on a little bit more? This is a little different, though. This is going to get us better sleep, because normally, just like Jason, after the show, all my wheels and gears are going, like thinking-wise.
Yep.
And it's weird because I'm tired by the end of the show, so my brain will like chill for a half an hour, and then all of a sudden the wheels start going a little faster and they pick up again, and it's like off to the races. And I'm like, what the heck? So we sometimes stay up till 1 or 2 before we go to bed after a broadcast. And it's just, with getting up at 6 in the morning, we're like, we can't do that. So good to be here, guys. Good to be here. Hey, Rachel. Rachel's in the house.
Cool.
Rachel Medipi.
All right. Well, everyone on the panel has said their hello. So, Jen, I know there's fewer people in the chat, but take a minute to say hello to everyone here, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. So I just said hey to Rachel. Nez is in the chat. Our very own Glenn and Nez. Christ is the Truth is here. Hey, Christ is the Truth. Glad you're here. Jamie Grace and Debbie S. are here. We said hello to them earlier, but hello again. Glad you guys are here.
Hello.
And thanks for joining us an hour earlier, guys. We appreciate it. Jamie, actually, we talked on the phone earlier this afternoon, and
cool.
she was like, I guess maybe I won't be falling asleep halfway through the show because you guys are starting a little bit earlier. I was like, woohoo!
All right.
So Jamie's awesome. Good to see you guys. We'll keep saying hey to people that pop in.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
I'm excited about the write-up. I actually haven't looked over it at all, so I'm doing a cold call which I sometimes like.
Well, yeah, there's a lot to look forward to. So we're going to dive right in because we definitely want to have enough time. I mean, even though we're doing it earlier, it would defeat the purpose to do a 3-hour broadcast. So we'll try to keep it close to the 2-hour mark. But and give us a little more leeway if we do run over sometimes a little bit too. So that's good. All right. So as I said at the top of the broadcast, tonight's topic is the privilege of freedom. Keepsake, a horse with no name. It starts with a quote. We don't come here to see the desert. We come here to feel it. And sometimes we have to travel to somewhere where there is no life to truly feel alive. Mohamed. Welcome to part 4, the final part of the privilege of life. I hope for those who have watched the videos and listened to the prior shows, this has conveyed the theme of this series. This being that life is a privilege, and we, the ones who are fortunate, have to say as to how we live it. Of all the quotes used, the above resonates the loudest. Why? Because when one is free, one is open to truly feel alive. And the usual links are included. A Song of the Sahara, a film by Sam Newton, only 6 minutes long. If you haven't seen that already, please give it a watch. And then Morocco 2022, A New World, a film by Rodrigo Mendonca, 5 minutes long for that one. If you haven't watched that, please give it a watch when you get a chance. Thank you. The first theme song for tonight is Keepsake by Audiomachine from their Nomad album. In the words of a listener, quote, a keepsake is a memory of an experience when we lived a moment in our life. I'll add that in moments of reflection, our keepsake can make life's routine seem so much more bearable. And the link to that song is in the description. The second theme song is A Horse with No Name by America. In common with Crips, it is one of my very favorite songs. As soon as the word desert was mentioned, the song was ringing bells. A few versions are below for you to check out. It is indeed one of my favorite songs, so I'm not surprised that we have that in common, Glenn. This evening's show is really 2 parts. The first is a philosophical discussion relating to an article sent to me by a valued listener. The second will be a discussion based on some individual responses to the question, what do you think of when you hear the word freedom? And the link to the article is also in the description. The article linked above is Alan Watts on Love, the Meaning of Freedom and the Only Real Antidote to Fear. Love me some Alan Watts. And a quote, you cannot think simultaneously about listening to the waves and whether you are enjoying listening to the waves. Alan Watts. What meaning do you assign to the quote above? Here's another one. Quote, fearlessness is what love seeks. End quote. Hannah Arendt. Arendt, 1929. Thoughts? The final quote from the article by Maria Popova is perhaps most relevant to listeners who are continually focused on what they wish for, but in doing so would seem to have exercised freedom from their equation of life. Quote, that in love and life, freedom from fear, like all species of freedom, is only possible within the present moment, has long been a core teaching of the most ancient Eastern spiritual and philosophical traditions. It is one of the most elemental truths of existence and one of those most difficult to put into practice as we move through our daily human lives, so habitually inclined toward the next moment and the mentally constructed universe of expected events. The parallel universe where anxiety dwells, where hope and fear for what might be eclipse what is, and where we cease to be free because we are no longer in the direct light of reality. End quote. Do you think that fear is the predominant factor preventing us from living in the moment? Do you believe living in the moment has merit in your life's approach? in your context, what might truly feel alive mean? Now, part 2. The panel has a task. Put on the table that we believe freedom represents. Let me start again. Put on the table what we believe freedom represents to us. I also have the extras, synchronicity and death. Chat, please add more. From here, it's an open discussion. To conclude this series on TSL, there has often been use of the word seek in many contexts. Seek means to look for, search for, etc. With reference to life. Is the basis of your life that you live to seek, seek to live, or don't seek at all? I like to think that one of the key words to freedom is availability. When one is truly available to life, many doors just tend to appear in response to being open. Just like riding the horse with no name, the doors need no name. As always, the onus is on you to open them if you are brave enough. Thanks for coming over the last 4 weeks to all. Well, I'll read that at the end. And there'll be a quote at the end, too, which I'll save for the end. It sounds kind of silly to say goodnight to everybody when we haven't even begun yet. I do that a lot. I read the whole thing. Anyway. Wow. Okay. We got a lot to go over. First, just really quickly, I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to watch the videos. If you haven't done it already, to listen to the songs. If you don't have time for all 3 of The Horse with No Name by America, I certainly get it. But when you have a little time, definitely immerse yourself in those videos and in the music. And I promise you won't regret it, especially the last song. I like all of it. I love Audiomachine, but this particular song, for me, it's not necessarily the desert that calls to me as much as it does to Glenn. It's just a fascinating song, and the imagery of the song has always reached me in a deep place. So, but yeah, it fits. It definitely fits. All right. Let me check the chat, make sure no one came in that I need to say hello to. I don't see anyone. Okay. We'll keep an eye on the chat. All right. So going back to another thing about Alan Watts. So Alan Watts, I'm sure some people might be confused. Alan Watts certainly wouldn't be considered necessarily a quote unquote Christian. But even before I had a lot of the realizations that I've had recently about the toxic parts of religion as it applies to Christianity, in my opinion, Alan Watts is a deep thinker, and I love philosophy. And not all philosophers are Christian by any stretch of the imagination. Some are, some have been. But I love people that really take the time to think about life and think about mentality, and he does talk about spiritual things as well. So I really enjoy a lot of his writings and sayings. I think you will too. But the quote is, "You cannot think simultaneously about listening to the waves and whether you are enjoying listening to the waves." And that is a quote directly from Alan Watts. So the first question to get our little broadcast going tonight is, what meaning do you assign to the quote above? And I'll read the quote above again. "You cannot think simultaneously about listening to the waves and whether you are enjoying listening to the waves." I think that's wonderful. Anyone have a burning desire to start us off by answering the question, what meaning do you assign to the quote above? Anybody? Okay, I'll go. So I believe Alan Watts is saying that he's separating the two things, thinking about listening to the waves. And when I read that, I love going to the beach. I don't necessarily love going into the ocean anymore. I did that when I was a kid, and I seem to enjoy it. But as an adult, yeah, not so much. But I love the sound of waves hitting the beach. I love seagull song. I love the wind. Everything else about the beach I absolutely adore. and I think it's calming. Jen and I put on sounds when we're sleeping. It just helps us relax, and it also helps drown the neighbors upstairs who make noise at all hours, pretty much. So we try to make it loud enough to kind of drown out the bumping and thumping that happens from the sky. And it helps. But I have, leading up to the sounds that we currently use, I have oftentimes listened to a lot of wave sounds, ocean sounds, seagull sounds. And there's a lot of good ones out there. There's something about it is relaxing. It obviously it's nostalgic to me for the times I've gone to the beach. Lots of memories related to that. So I've never thought of it in terms of while I'm at the beach or while I'm enjoying the sounds of the beach, I'm not thinking about whether I'm enjoying it. I just am enjoying it. So I believe what he's saying here, the meaning that I assign to it is that don't complicate yourself by trying to think about everything too hard. Just enjoy. That's what it says to me. I probably couldn't go deeper than that, but I think it's a pretty simple idea. You're in the moment thinking about just listening, freeing your mind of complicated topics. In this case, from my opinion, letting yourself just be in the moment with the waves, just listening to the waves. And if you add to that, if Alan Watts is saying you can't also in the moment be enjoying listening to the waves and thinking about enjoying listening to the waves. I don't know, maybe someone can elucidate more on that, or they have a better response than I do. I think of it as just being in the moment or living in the moment. And in this particular case, listening to the waves doesn't have to be complex. It can just be enjoyable just to do the one thing. Anyone else wants to go next?
Me.
All right, go, Jen.
So this makes me think of like if I were to sort of shift it over to other things that we enjoy, thinking about someone who hasn't found love yet. They're thinking about enjoying it when it comes. And then when you have found it, when you're in it, you're in the midst of it, you're kind of soaking it up and enjoying it, but you're not thinking about how you're enjoying it as if before when you were actually out of it. Does that make sense?
Actually, it does to me, because that's the way my mind works, and I know how you think, so
Yeah.
it makes sense to me. But does everyone else understand what Jen just said?
Yeah.
So it's like the first part, you're not like at the beach yet, so you're thinking about enjoying the waves, but then when you're there and the waves are doing their magic, that beautiful sound, relaxing, just washing over you.
Yeah.
You're in the moment experiencing it, and you're not having to think about enjoying it while you're enjoying it.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I mean, it's subjective to the question is for you. Glenn wrote the question, what meaning do you assign to it? But that makes total sense.
Yeah. I'll also add, I think it's normal to have a passing thought, like when you're with family or doing something that you enjoy, you have a passing thought of, gosh, I really enjoy this.
Yeah.
But when you're in it, in the present, when you're actually present and you're not like disassociated or,
Right.
something weird, you're not actively thinking about it. You're kind of soaking it in.
Yeah.
And being present. So.
Yeah, being present. I think that's really the point to it, in my opinion. But that's great, Jen. Thank you so much. What do you think, Naz? What meaning do you assign to the quote above? You cannot think simultaneously about listening to the waves and whether you are enjoying and listening to the waves. What do you think?
No, I agree with what you guys said. It just means being in the moment, living the moment, experiencing what's going on. Thinking is good, and I agree with you, Jen. Sometimes you can't help but have a passing thought while you're in the moment, but
Right.
to stay entirely focused and present in the moment you're enjoying, that's one thing. But if you're going to let your mind go to a place that's outside of that, thinking about other things, that's going to remove you from being in the present.
Yeah.
And what sense is there overthinking about something that you are already enjoying? If you like the waves and you're there, then enjoy them.
Right.
So I agree with you guys. So
I love it. I love it.
Breathing
Thank
it
you.
in.
Thank you, Nez. I appreciate your opinion on that one. What do you say, Glenn? You cannot think simultaneously about listening to the waves and whether you are enjoying listening to the waves.
I think he's saying, in terms of freedom, if you are making yourself, if you wish to experience it from a free place, you can't be thinking about it. I think that he's saying the two are contradictory,
Sure.
conflicting. But what I also think he's saying, or I'm reading into it, is that if you are not if you're thinking about it, it's going to cloud your emotional experience and response to the waves.
Yeah.
I think it makes you unavailable because all your energy is going into thinking, but none of your energy is allowing what's there to come to you and allow you to experience it.
Exactly. Well, I think on this one, the four of us are kind of in the same place with our answers, and that makes sense. So there's corroboration, so to speak. Yeah, live in the moment, and in terms of freedom, enjoy the freedom that you have and not be thinking about whether you're enjoying the freedom you have. I think there's a lot to be said about that. I think we live in a society where a lot of people, including myself at times, have trouble living in the moment. I'll just relate an anecdote that has been fairly familiar over the past, year and a half or so, is every time it comes close to the 5th, not every time, there's sometimes it hasn't happened, but we've been really tight on money and we pay a lot of money for rent, as a lot of people do. And I have shared with Jen that when it comes to the last week before rent is due, I have this nagging anxiety. I don't know how things are going to work out because things are so tight. And sometimes we have a little bit more than other times, and sometimes we don't. And it got really bad in January before I got this job because the side work that I do that I had hoped would become my permanent job, I didn't get any projects. So we had a really difficult month in January and much of February. But the anxiety is still there because things are still tight. I haven't gotten my first big 2-week paycheck yet, but it's a little different. So rather than, I did share with Jen today that I had that nagging anxiety. I can feel it in there. But I have been trying more lately to just enjoy my day. It's wonderful to have a weekend with Jennifer and just to try to live in the moment. I'm not saying I'm perfect at it. I like anyone, I get distracted by things, and that's one of the things I get distracted by more than anything, unfortunately. And it really irritates me. I'm not a big money grubber, don't really care much about money, but it is a reality in the society we live in. We have to have it, otherwise you live in your van. Some people are cool living in their van, but I've never been in that position, fortunately, and I don't want that, So when we're tight, it can be something that I put too much focus on, in my opinion. But certainly over the past year and a half, I've had a lot of practice in trying to stave that off a little bit. And it's not about ignoring the reality of the situation that you're in. It's just living in gratitude and realizing that I have way more things to be grateful for that I could focus on rather than this one stinking thing. So I out of all that, I say that I have gotten better at it, but I have a long way to go in that particular area. Living in the moment at all times and enjoying things as they come and not thinking about whether I'm enjoying the things. I think it's a great quote. All right. Checking the chat. No new folks in there yet. We'll keep looking. All right. Here's another one. Fearlessness is what love seeks. Gosh, I can't wait to answer this one, but I'll give everyone else a chance if they want to. Fearlessness is what love seeks. This is from Hannah Arendt. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Arendt, 1929. So this is from a while back. Still just as poignant today. Fearlessness is what love seeks. Anyone want to answer this one?
Why don't you go, Chris? Because you're just really wanting it.
I do really want it because thank you. This idea of fear, it's paralyzing. It strips you of enjoyable things in life, at least in my own experience. I have felt moments of fear. Now, I've never felt the moment of fear, like fear for my life, like being chased. Now, I have had a couple inside. At one point, I was robbed at gunpoint, and I was surprised at how little fear I felt in the moment. It's like something else took over, and I was very calm, eerily calm. And when I played that out as someone that at the time drove cab, we heard about drivers getting assaulted and sometimes murdered all the time. It's a dangerous job. You know, sometimes you get people in your car and you think, no, this guy's shady, you know, and nothing happens. And on this particular occasion, the guy was totally nice, and that should have been a warning to me, should have been a red flag. But at that time in my life, I wasn't as easily able to identify, and warning bells did not go off this particular evening. But the point of it is that I was surprised that I didn't feel fear, but that's not what this is about to me. It's about when a person lives in fear or allows fear to take them out of the moment. So from the quote, fearlessness is what love seeks. So there's a verse in the Bible that it means a lot to me. It's perfect love casts out all fear. So this quote relates to me to Scripture. The idea that when we learn to love perfectly, it removes all fear. This makes a lot of sense to me. So you could use it in any way. You could talk about relationships, like in a romantic or married relationship. When you know the other person can be trusted, you don't fear that they're going to leave you, and your love continues to grow and grow. You don't live in fear about losing the other person in that way. And that's what I experience every day. I have no fear that Jen would ever leave or cheat on me or anything like that. We can't control life. I mean, there's a little bit of fear. I don't spend a lot of time in it. Both of us have discussed something happening to the other. It's not a happy thought. It's a dark path. But we don't stay in that place. But it exists. So the idea of being in a place of fearlessness and using love as a vehicle to that makes a lot of sense, as it also lines up with Scripture for me. So I won't go on and on about it. I probably could say more, but let's hear what everyone else has to say. Let's ask Nez. Nez, you're up next if you'd like to be. Fearlessness is what love seeks. What do you think?
I agree with what you said, especially the Scripture that says perfect love casts out all fear. And many times, and not just in Christian scriptures, there are other texts from different religions that also say, don't fear. You know, fear across the board is not a good thing. It doesn't produce good fruit. And I'm not talking about the fear of, don't touch something hot. That falls to me, in my opinion, more as just basic common sense, rather than a soul-gripping fear that immobilizes you.
Right.
And I don't believe we're supposed to have soul-gripping fear that immobilizes us or manipulates us into doing things. Doing something motivated by fear is never a good thing.
Right.
And I say that on my channel all the time. Hashtag no fear at any time for any reason.
I love it.
And I from a follower of Christ standpoint, we're not to have fear. The only fear that Christians are called to have is the fear of the Lord, which is the beginning of wisdom. So that's pretty much all I got to say about that.
Yeah, and let me add to that in my opinion, that fear is reverence rather than shaky kind of.
Exactly. Again, common sense.
Well, it should be, but it may not be to everyone. But yeah, I agree with you. It should be common sense. But it may not be. Real quick, we'll say hello to newcomers, Paul, John Stone, and Ajot. And I mean, newcomers they're here in the chat with us tonight. So thank you guys for coming early. We appreciate it. Thank you for seeing the link and clicking on it and coming in and join us here in the chat. We're glad you're here. I kind of anticipated that maybe we wouldn't have as many people, and that's okay. We're grateful for everyone that shows until everyone gets used to the time change. So welcome, guys. Thank you for being here. Okay. All right. Let's go to Jen next on this one. Fearlessness is what love seeks. What do you think of it, Jen?
So I think I personally want to live in and out of a place of love. And part of that is speaking my truth, living in my truth, allowing other people to do the same. And I think when you have dynamics in life or relationships or happenings where there's fear, it's stifling.
Yeah.
And I can't equate that. I can't connect that to love.
Yeah.
I think, when it comes to self-love, speaking from your truth, living in your truth is a very big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But then also extending that to other people, even if you don't agree, with them, or you have different characteristics or personalities or beliefs or whatever.
Yeah.
It's interesting because we've talked many times about, differing beliefs and how, even I used to get afraid when I would meet people that had different beliefs. And I think part of that was I hadn't walked through my own apologetics.
Right.
And I hadn't had a lot of experience or practice in sticking up for my beliefs. And I always had this mindset, because I think this happens more times than not, where you meet people and they have differing beliefs and you feel attacked, like your beliefs feel attacked. And I didn't really know how to stand firm in my beliefs, even though I believed it to the fullest.
Right.
So it created fear. And so, I just think when it's connected to living in a place of love and living outwardly in a place of love,
Mm-hmm.
being fearful just doesn't fit. And right now I'm going through some things where these two opposite things are grappling with each other.
Right.
And it's I hate it. It's painful.
It's unpleasant.
It's very unpleasant. It's very uncomfortable. And I don't mean that I'm not living out of love, but it's
Right.
just when I have fear of certain things or certain people, it stifles me living in my truth and speaking truth in love.
Right.
So it's, I'm growing, but it's growing pains. It's not comfortable.
Yeah. Do you feel like that erodes your freedom a little bit when you're in that place?
Yeah. I don't if I were to compare this situation with say my relationship with you, I feel incredibly safe with you.
Yeah.
And I feel very loved and accepted by you. And so I'm able to fully be myself around you.
Yeah.
And that is such an incredible, freeing feeling. I want to have that all the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So then when I get around certain people, it's almost like I have to conceal parts of myself or kind of shrink into myself.
Yeah.
And I don't like that, because I've had this taste of freedom and love, and that's what I want to operate out of all the time.
Yes.
And so, and it also kind of feels like a self-betrayal, and it's intrinsically connected to fear.
Wow.
And so it's yikes. It's not fun.
Wow. Beautiful. Well said, Jen. Thank you for sharing
Thanks.
that. All right. Last but certainly not least, Glenn, what do you think of the quote, "Fearlessness is what love seeks"? How do you see it?
I totally agree with it, but I think this, even though there's only 5 words, I think this is one of the hardest things to do.
Yeah.
I think all of us at some point have been hurt by family or friends or partners or whoever, and we've said, and the predominant message in our heads when going forward is, I've been hurt, so hence I'm reluctant to trust.
Right.
Now I think this is such a key, and I if you don't mind, I'd like to hear how people have overcome this, because seriously, I've done it myself, and I know that you just don't change from overnight and suddenly transform yourself into someone who doesn't have fear.
I mean, that's a great question. I'd be happy to give you my thoughts on that. I agree with you that for most people, it doesn't happen overnight. This is something that for me has happened over time. It is something you learn. Like, for instance, I know it doesn't really apply as much because it's not really fear, I don't think, with the rent situation, but it is an anxiety. So it could be in the same vicinity as fear. I don't really fear actually getting to the point of eviction. But anytime I have felt fear, it like I said to Jen, it erodes freedom, and I don't like the way that feels. As she was saying, she doesn't like it. It's something she experiences, and she's aware that it's not the way she feels all the time. She wants to be in that place with everyone that she deals with, and it's a hard task, because with me, she said that she feels safe, and I feel the same way with her, but I don't necessarily feel that from anyone else. Now, as I have said hundreds of times on this program, we can't control anyone else. All we can do is control ourselves. So the growth that happens to get into this place, it definitely doesn't happen overnight. For me, it happens by each time I face my fear or anxiety or whatever it might be, loss of freedom. I learn a little bit more. I grow a little bit more. It's like a child being afraid of the dark. As they grow older, they realize that, there aren't any monsters under the bed. They're not in the closet, things like that. And so they kind of grow out of it. I think fear is a little bit different than that. As adults, we still fear certain things, but the more we face it, it's immersion, psychological term of, particularly for people that have phobias of some sort. I think it's very effective in that if you're afraid of flying, you don't start out by just jumping on a plane. You look at pictures of the airport for a while. The first time you just go to the airport, you don't get on a plane, you just go. And then eventually you get to the point where you buy a ticket, and that's all you do. You don't go anywhere. That'd be a waste of money, but you get the idea. So it's immersing yourself. If you're fearful of something, you immerse yourself in it bit by bit. And then each time you try, hopefully you grow a little bit more courage. And then eventually you're not afraid anymore. So yeah, it doesn't happen overnight, in my opinion. It definitely is something that is worked on, going through it. And lastly, I'll say that avoiding it doesn't work. If you're fearful of something, so like if you're afraid of drowning and you just decide not to go swimming, that may be an option for someone, but you're missing out on the enjoyment of the thing, the act of swimming, by being afraid that you're going to drown. I think that's a pretty good analogy, at least to me. Anyone else want to answer Glenn's secondary question? How does a person get to this point of being fearless or living in that place, the freedom of fearlessness?
I'll have a go.
Okay, please.
From personal experience, the exhaustion of it just got too much. I just said, I can't. This is me thinking inside my head's telling me, just doing this. Do they like you? Do they not? This fear thing, it just leaves you exhausted to the point where I said, I cannot do this anymore. This is ridiculous. I am just destroying myself. For what reason? Right. There isn't one. Right. There's no good reason for me doing this. So I said, okay, well, let's try the other way and just throw caution to the wind and just go out there and say, okay, well, what happens. Well, gee, that made a lot of difference. Then everything starts to fall into place. Whereas before, when you're coming at it, you're trying to direct the universe. It doesn't work. Right. So yeah, mine was just the mental, physical, emotional exhaustion. Just said, no more, can't do it. Right. Won't do it. Sort of gotcha. Exhaustion. But you got to get there. That's the point. I had to get to the bottom of the pit, the barrel, before I just said, I can't do it. Right. Right. Thanks. Thank you, Glenn. Nez, you want to take a shot at it?
Sure. Read it again for me, please.
This is an additional question. It's not actually written down, but Glenn's asking, how do you get to a place of fearlessness? How do you, I mean, obviously it's a struggle for a lot of people. I'll just say before you answer, it's addressed in the Bible a lot. Anytime someone meets an angel, almost the first thing that comes out of every angel's mouth is fear not. Obviously it is a fearful situation. So they're trying to calm the person down and say there's no need to fear. And Jesus addressed this a lot too. Don't worry. He said the word worry, but it's still in the same vicinity, like anxiety, for instance. He's saying, don't worry about the things of life. There's other things to focus on love and and all the fruits of the spirits and things like that. So God knows that we do experience fear. He's just trying to tell us not to, you know. So living in a place of fearlessness, how does one, what advice would you give to someone, or how does that work for you to not live in fear?
For me, as a soldier of Christ, I would say put your trust in Him. In my experience, that took care of so many things in my life, including fear and being afraid of things that we don't need to be afraid of. Aside from that, I can just say, you brought up facing your fear. Face what you're so afraid of.
Right.
Especially when I think of people who are afraid to talk about certain topics.
Right.
Well, why is that? Do we need to be afraid to have conversations? I mean, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me.
Why indeed?
Why indeed? If it's just a conversation, what in the world?
Yeah.
So face what you're being made to feel afraid of.
Right.
And learn from that.
Right.
And as unless, like I said earlier about good sense, don't go touching an animal that could, bite you and hurt you. That's wild. That again, that's common sense.
Yeah.
And there's that kind of fear. I understand, but why be afraid of everyday life experiences and encounters when that's just what life is?
Right. It is, isn't it?
One experience to the next, one lesson to be learned on to the next. Sometimes they are hard yards, to coin a phrase that you guys coined the phrase, but that's okay. Don't be afraid of that either. There's nothing that's going to happen to us that is going to destroy who we are and what we are.
Right.
Our bodies might get bruised, our egos might get bruised. So what?
Right.
Value the experience and glean what you can from it. So that's all I can say about that.
All right. Perfect. Thank you, guys. I think those were all good answers. All right. I want to say a quick hello to our friend Big Tim. In God We Trust, Patriot US 2. We're glad that you're here, buddy. Please feel welcome. Also, our friend Conscious Evolution, the Conscious Evolution channel is here. We're glad you came back. You saw that we were changing our time, and we're glad you're here. Thank you for being here. Appreciate that so much. Hope you enjoy the conversation. Hope everyone does, really. All right. Okay, so the next quote is that in love and life, freedom from fear, like all species of freedom, is only possible within the present moment, has long been a core teaching of the most ancient Eastern spiritual and philosophical traditions. It is one of the most elemental truths of existence, and one of those most difficult to put into practice as we move through our daily human lives, so habitually inclined toward the next moment and the mentally constructed universe of expected events, the parallel universe where anxiety dwells, where hope and fear for what might be eclipse what is, and where we cease to be free because we are no longer in the direct light of reality. This is huge, in my opinion. I love this whole quote. This is what we experience sometimes. Jen talks about dark paths or dark thoughts that happen, of what could happen. Now, fortunately, she and myself do not live in these things, but everyone has these thoughts sometimes. I mentioned it earlier of something happening to one of us. I fear something happened to me and how Jen might have to deal with that. And I also fear something happening to her and how I might deal with that. And I think it's just a natural byproduct. We live in a world where accidents happen, unfortunately, and people get sick, and it's just part of the reality that we live in. But I don't like fearing something and allowing it to take my enjoyment out of whatever time we have together, because we have no control over that. So this is very much is what I feel like this is addressing. That the person in the quote, Maria Popova, I think she's got her finger right on the pulse of this idea. She addresses the the habitually inclined toward the next moment and mentally constructed universe of expected events. And then she says the parallel universe where anxiety dwells, where hope and fear for what might be eclipse what is. So not living in the reality of the moment and the situation, but being worried by things that could happen. I think that's good stuff. So the first question after the quote is, do you think that fear is the predominant factor preventing us from living in the moment? So based on the quote, what do you think, Jen? Do you think that fear is the predominant factor preventing us from living in the moment? What do you say?
I'd say absolutely. Because I know for me, what shoves me out of the present moment is used to be more thinking about the past and the future.
Yeah.
But now it's the future. And I tend to catastrophize things sometimes.
Sure.
And I'm so out of fear, I'm trying to prepare myself for things that could potentially happen that are bad.
Right.
And so I'm not present. And I'm also worrying about something that could potentially not happen.
Right.
So it's a thief.
Yeah.
Fear is a thief. And it's really irritating. And it's gotten better for me, but I have it's a roller coaster. I have times where I'm like, yes, I've conquered this. This is great,
Yeah.
And then I'll have a week where it's like, and I'm like back and I'm like, what?
What happened?
Like I got the t-shirt and the bumper sticker and the hardbound book. Like, why am I back here?
Yeah.
So, it's frustrating.
Yeah, fear. So you're saying you agree that fear is the predominant factor that's preventing us from living in the moment.
Definitely.
Wow.
If anybody discovers the trick behind this, I mean, I know part of it for me is prayer. But dang, sometimes I'll pray and I still go there. I'm like, wait,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, thank you, Jen, for sharing and being transparent like that with everyone. Yeah, I think it's easy to do that because the world can be kind of scary, and there's a lot of what if scenarios that you could really spend a lot of time thinking about. So we don't necessarily have control over thoughts that pop in our head. I think we do have control over, fixating on those thoughts, how far down the dark path we go. I'm no different. There's not a whole lot of things that I spend a lot of time on the dark paths because I have already done that and it doesn't lead anywhere good. The dark paths in your mind, that's not the reality of the situation you're in. They don't lead anywhere good. They are not helpful.
Nope.
Biblically speaking, Paul made a good point to say, think about good things, focus on good things, whatever's lovely, whatever is of good report. Whatever's virtuous, whatever's true, think on these things rather than the negative things. Now, I'm not by any means saying, to forget about the reality. If you're in a tough situation, obviously you need to focus on the situation and get yourself out of it. If the apartment's on fire, you don't just stand there and say, well, the apartment's not on fire. The apartment's not on fire. If that's the reality, then you have to do something about it. You either get an extinguisher and try to put out the fire, or if it's too big, you get out. You do something to free yourself from the situation. But this is something that we don't have to do, in my opinion. We don't have to allow ourselves to focus on these things that may never occur. So for me, do you think that fear is the predominant factor preventing us from living in the moment? Absolutely, yes. Again, back to the scripture, perfect love casts out all fear. I mean, that's part of it, but it's not always just about relationships. There are lots of things happening in the world at all times, that if you focus on that, and of course they want you to focus on that. This isn't a conspiracy theory. Anyone that doesn't believe that can just turn on the news at 11 o'clock and they push fear. The term fear porn is out there. It seems like the world seems to focus on the fear of things rather than the positive things. I know when I was growing up, local broadcasts would have all this doom and gloom stuff. And then at the end, sometimes they would have a puff piece, something good that's happening. Here's where you can adopt a puppy, but there's so much of the fear stuff, the bad news, that one little piece of good news doesn't really, it's like a drop in the bucket, in my opinion. But I think that this person, Maria, has really got it in recognizing what people go through and how difficult it is. I particularly like the part about habitually inclined toward the next moment and the mentally constructed universe of expected events. Thinking about things that you have in your mind constructed. Sure, are some of them things that could happen? Most times, probably. I mean, if you're worried about a zombie apocalypse, I guess I don't know for sure that it will never happen, but it's not likely, in my opinion, to ever happen. So if you're spending time worried about something like that, then you're really wasting your time. On the other hand, thinking about, World War or something like that, something that could be way more likely. But either way, either of those things, if you're allowing it to erode the freedom and living in the moment, I think you're doing yourself a disservice. And you're probably also doing a disservice to those around you. And I'm not preaching at anyone. I'm saying the same thing to myself, because I'm certainly not free of these moments either. But it's definitely something I want to move away from, for sure. Let's go to Glenn next on this one. Do you think that fear is the predominant factor preventing us from living in the moment? What do you say, Glenn?
I do, and I do absolutely. And for some unknown reason, this image came into my head of the guy who's going to ask a person to be their partner, or what's the politically correct, not a woke or whatever. It's all beyond me. Anyway, someone and so they go and buy a ring, right?
Right.
Let's just keep it an engagement ring to keep my simple mind simple.
Sure.
And they're shaking in their boots out of fear about asking the question. Why? Why are people fearful for asking a question? Because if someone says no, aren't you just better off without them anyway? It seems pretty straightforward.
Right.
Whatever the outcome, there's no need for fear. Just get on with it.
Right.
It's your issue.
Right.
So anyway, but I wanted to bring up, Nez will correct me, AJOT, AJOT. How do you pronounce
That's right.
it?
Yep.
Pardon?
That's correct, AJOT. I love AJOT.
Well, I don't know where AJOT comes from. But anyway, I thought a very relevant thing said was, okay, I'm just going to paraphrase it, the second part of the comment. When I decided to be my true self all the time, I find myself more alone now than I did hiding parts of me.
Wow.
I think that's quite poignant comment,
yes.
Profound comment. And I believe it's worthy just to think about this for a few minutes.
Of course. So I put it up on the screen.
Oh, so great.
AJOT says, so speaking on what Starling, he put Sterling, but I'm sure that just misspelling. So what Starling was saying about being her true self. I hide for many years. When I decided to be my true self all the time, I find myself more alone now than I did hiding parts of me. I mean, that's very profound, in my opinion. I'll just leave it up there for a second. And if anyone wants to comment to AJOT on that in the chat, please feel free to do so. I'll add the second part. AJOT says, I wasn't happy hiding parts of me, but I can't say being my true self has made me any happier, if that makes sense.
Can I say something to that?
Please do, Jen.
Sorry, this makes me want to cry.
Oh,
love that beautiful heart.
We love you.
It would make me wonder, AJOT, if your happiness is connected to other people accepting your true self or if your happiness is connected to you
Right.
being your true self and the joy that brings you
Wow.
and you living in your truth and accepting and loving you.
Yeah.
Because that's
Wow.
what I've struggled with. I think my entire life I have been more focused on being accepted and loved by everybody else. And I do think that was the actual catalyst that made me feel like I had to hide parts of myself, because I was afraid if someone saw all of me, they would walk away or not love me or withhold love or any of those awful things.
Wow.
So I don't know if you would be up to answering, but what I have found, and I'm not there yet, that's why it's so emotional, but what I have found is the more I am myself and embrace myself, not in a, I feel like I always have to preface it, but not in a I'm so awesome, not an unhealthy way,
Right.
but just fully accepting myself and loving who God made me to be. There is so much more joy and peace in that. And if people walk away, then they're not your people.
Yes.
And Glenn said years ago, and I truly believe this, when people start falling away, when you're growing on your journey of accepting yourself and embracing yourself and loving yourself, I believe it's God, and I know Glenn believes it's the universe, and that's okay. But it's like you start attracting people that are on the same journey as you.
Yes.
But that also can see because I do believe that there is a light that happens in us when we are operating in our authentic selves, and it attracts other people that are also operating, or at least learning how to operate in their authentic selves.
Wow.
And my circle is smaller now than it used to be, and I'm totally okay with that, because I'd rather have a few authentic people in my circle than a room full of people that don't fully know me.
Wow.
And there really is. I've had moments where it's been lonely, and that sucks. But I would rather be lonely because I'm telling you, when I've been in groups of people where I've had to hide parts of myself, that's even lonelier. At least for me, it's a lonelier feeling.
Yeah.
To know that I've had some self-erasure in order to be around certain people than being by myself and fully being myself, or being around a few people and also being just fully myself and authentic. And I don't know if that helps, but I hope it does.
Wow. Well, that was very well said. And thank you everyone for being here tonight at True Story Live. We'll see you next week. Nothing else needs to be said. That's it.
I was like, what is he doing?
No.
I had to catch the sarcasm later.
Yeah, that was very profound. Thank you for sharing that. I do hope that helps. Anyone else want to comment on what Ajot said before we move forward?
I will just quickly add, I thought what Jen said was just marvelous, wonderful.
Yeah.
And I think you can look at being alone in a number of ways. I think that when you learn to be alone and you don't need anyone else to basically be responsible for your happiness, you'll find that people will gravitate to you. It's in that needy place where you're desiring people to come, they won't, because they can't relate. But when you are totally free in yourself and okay with being alone, I think you find the floodgates open and they just come forward, bang. It just hits you like a wave.
Yeah.
So, but there was one other comment, Griff, just by Ajot. It's just not that far up in the chat if you want to put up. I'm a little different. I'm at the point in my life where I love myself, the good, the bad, all of me. So what others think of me doesn't matter until I realize I'm the only one that loves me. Well, I doubt that. Yeah. So we have to ask. That's really another show in itself. You'd have to ask some really pointed questions, I think.
Yeah.
But I would be suggesting that your assumption is possibly incorrect.
Yeah, that's a good way to
only
say
your
that.
Perception that only one that loves you is you.
That's a good way to say that. Yeah.
It's a question. I can't know the answer.
Right. Only Ajot can answer that, but I can add to that I understand why you would feel that way. I think Jen nailed it when she was talking about, choosing to be herself and a smaller circle of friends and things like that. And to think that if she would have stayed in that place of being worried about what other people thought of her and not becoming who she is, I mean, she would not be the person that she is. To allow the fear to paralyze her, to allow her freedom to be eroded to the point where she's not living in that place where she is now. And she said, I haven't arrived. I'm not there yet, 100%. But when do we ever arrive? That's been my ongoing question. Everyone wants to be in this place or that place, but sometimes it really is true. It's not the destination, it's the journey. And that used to irritate me. I was like, I just want to get there. Why can't I get there? But over time, I have learned that it is the journey. The journey in the context of what we're talking about for Ajot, and not just for them, but for a lot of people that are in the same place. Being yourself is in a way its own reward, but I understand the desire to want people to love you. But it's what Glenn was talking about in the idea of an engagement. If the person says no, they weren't the right person for you. There are people, I don't even know you, completely. We've never met. We've never talked, except for on here. But you are loved. You are loved. And I you can't convince someone of that, but I just know that that is true. You're loved as being a person in the world. You're loved as being a friend of Nez and a friend of ours now, because you have taken the time to come in here and join us in our chat. You are completely and totally welcome here. And I just hope for you that you continue to embrace that, the self-love that as Jen was saying, it's not narcissism to love yourself and to know that being yourself is one of the most important things, in my opinion, in this world. It is worth all the risk. And there are people out there, you just have to find them. Don't give up on that, please. That's all.
If I can say
Please.
one more thing.
Of course.
Oh, Ajot, I love you, honey, and we all can relate to things that you're talking about. Honestly, we can. And I'm just as proud to introduce you to Jen and Jason and Glenn up here as I'm as proud to introduce you to them. I mean, both ways. You guys are good people, and you all are very loved, and I just love y'all. There you go. There's your goopy, sappy little bit from me there. I love you.
I don't think it was sappy at all. Go ahead, Glenn.
No, I was just going to say, I just put to Ajot, I'd like to send something to her if she's willing. Is it he or she? I'm not sure.
It's a lady. She's beautiful, and she is just a wonderful lady. I'm so glad she's here.
Right. It's the Marianne Williamson that Linda gave me. How crazy grips that we were just speaking about that yesterday.
I know.
Yep. I think it is right on the money and worth a listen.
Yep.
So if she is happy for us to send it however way wished, I'd be more than pleased to do so. It's a fantastic listen.
Okay.
It changed me. I can tell you, it changed my whole perception of what love is about. Yeah.
So, Ajot, if you're interested in receiving that from Glenn, just let Nez know. I don't know if she has your contact information, but if you
can email me, and anybody can email me with questions, comments, suggestions for topics for the show, prayer requests, or you just want to holler at me, there's my email right there.
Perfect. Thank you, Nez. So if you, if Ajot, just one last time, if you would like to receive that from Glenn, just let Nez know.
I'll hook you up.
We'll make sure and get that to you. Okay. All right. I do want to say hello to our friend Believe, who popped in the chat while we were talking with Ajot. Welcome, Believe. We're glad that you're here. And Believe always has a lot of good comments. And one of the comments, I'm putting it up, it says there are a lot of wolves sniffing out neediness too. And that is true. There are people out there that are definitely wolves, and they're looking for neediness. They're looking for any kind of weakness and things like that. That is true. But I try, again, it's not thinking they don't exist, but I try not to spend a whole lot of time focusing on them. What I'm looking for is people like Jen was saying, people that are like-minded, people that are safe, and they're on their own journey. It doesn't have to be my journey, but they are people that want some of the same things, which for me is just wanting to live a life of love, being in this place of love for everyone, loving my enemies, as Jesus said, praying for those that persecute you. And it's not an easy task. And it's this concept of gratitude, living in gratitude, and knowing that it's not just about that so many people have it worse off than you. I mean, that may be completely 100% true, but each of our own experiences is important to us. But trying to find the things that we do have gratitude for and focusing more on those than you are the negative things or the things that we don't have. So there we go. All right. We'll move on to the next one. I think everyone answered that one. Did we not? Yes.
I believe so.
Okay. Next question. Do you believe living in the moment has merit in your life's approach? And we'll switch it up and we'll ask Glenn first. Do you believe living in the moment has merit in your life's approach, Glenn?
Well, there's no other way, is there? Like when Sandra had the potential death sentence for cancer, what's the point of thinking about what's going to happen tomorrow? You have to deal in the moment.
Right.
Because you've got no idea. I mean, what else can you do?
Yeah.
So for a very, very long time, I just gave up this thinking. Like when Sandra and I got together, we said, let's set a 5-year plan. We'll do this, we'll do that. After about 2 days, we said, I'll bugger that. Forget it. Let's just get on and do stuff now. Forget about plans. Like I know that's hard for people, some people who are very methodical. But we just said, look, just wade through it.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah.
And nothing's changed. You just got to go for it, in our opinion. So.
Thank you, Glenn. I think that is a good place to be in. I mean, how many times, like with interviews, now fortunately on this interview for the job that I just got, they did not ask me what my 5-year plan is. I think it's such a ridiculous question. Some people don't have a 5-year plan. I'm not saying, you shouldn't plan for some things, but I love this idea of living in a moment. Even if I haven't quite got it 100% yet, it is something I want. I want to be able to enjoy the time that I have and not be worried about things that may never happen or things that could happen. So do you believe living in the moment has merit in your life's approach? Absolutely. As Jen said, in terms of what we're talking about earlier, again, this is a thing I haven't arrived there yet. I believe I have gotten better at it. But if you spend time worrying about all these other things or worried about what will happen in the future, I mean, aging, for instance, is an inevitability. I am going to age. I am going to likely have more physical, not handicaps, but struggles. As you age, things come up in that way. But if I spend time worried about that, or what's going to happen if this event happens, what happens if I, God forbid, like Sandra is in the struggle with cancer. It happens to a lot of people, and it's a horrible thing. I wish that it didn't exist, but it does happen to people. It could happen to me. It could happen to any one of us. And the idea that Glenn's talking about is, instead of, trying to plan things out, of saving your strength for dealing with what's right in front of you. And it doesn't have to be something like cancer. It can be just enjoying whatever it is that you have in front of you rather than worrying about the future. I think it's extremely important. What do you think, Jen? Do you believe living in the moment has merit in your life's approach?
Absolutely. What's weird? I was just thinking about this when you guys were talking. I made a comment in the chat about with what Ajot was talking about, not to, it all connects. Don't worry. I'm not getting too off topic, but
I'm not worried.
I was thinking how I am more easily myself when I forget myself. And that also connects to being in the present. And I'll give you guys an example. Okay, so the majority of my life, I have sat in anxiety of, are these pants too tight? Like, is my muffin top showing? Like all kinds of different things. Just examples, you got a little pudge going on. Or wondering like how you're coming across to someone. Was that joke funny? Does this person I just met, do they actually like me? Or are they putting on a facade? Like, it's like rapid fire. Our brains are so amazing in a lot of ways, but it can be very destructive. But when you live in the moment, and for me, it is self-forgetfulness. It's paying attention to the people around me. It's experiencing the present. Dag nabbit, what was the question again?
Do you believe living in the moment has merit in your life's approach?
Yes, it does. Living in the moment. I'm trying to think life's approach. Glenn, could you break that down for me a little bit? What are you looking for?
I'm not looking for anything except that's why I like for you to assign your own meaning to the question.
Okay, so life's approach, I'm thinking about just as I launch into a new day. Living in the present, I feel like, I know we have to plan for things, you know what I mean? Like I'll think, I have 12 minutes to get to work. Like, what time do I need to leave? That kind of stuff.
Right.
But I think it has a lot of merit with living in the present.
Sure.
I have spent the majority of my life not living in the present, and it's so disorienting. Like when I look at my past, I feel like it's a movie that I watched.
Yeah.
And I think, a lot of times we're looking at our life from the outside in. And I think when you're present, you're kind of living life from the inside out. And I feel like it gives you, not like I can only speak for me, not that I'm like walking around like control, I want control over my life, but there is this freedom and peace through living through being present.
Yes.
And there is peace.
Yes.
I feel like the times when I try to do it any other way, it's either there's no peace or it's like a road to no peace.
Right.
Because I don't know about you guys, but the way my brain works, it'll start with like one or two thoughts, then it becomes 10, then it's 25, then it's 30. And then I'm not even present because my brain's going off, and I have a little bit of ADHD, but my brain's going off on all of these different paths. And it's like I've left my body, and I'm not saying literally, but it's like that,
Yeah.
So being present is it's a gift.
Yes.
It's such a gift because it's so connected to peace, I think, and which is freedom. I those two things kind of are one for me.
Yep. Beautifully said. Thank you, Jen. Wow, everyone's answers are wonderful. They always are, but tonight particularly, this is really an engaging topic, and I'm really enjoying the discussion. Thank you also to everyone in the chat who has put some things up for discussion as well. There's more to come. Nez, what do you say? Do you believe living in the moment has merit in your life's approach?
Absolutely. And I've had to work to get there. That didn't just happen overnight.
No.
It takes time. It takes practice. It takes actively setting out to do that. Because if you just let your mind drift, like Jen was just saying, you'll be concerned about how fat you might think you looked, or the list goes on. And then soon you're questioning, what should I have for dinner? Oh, I'm too fat to eat. Never mind dinner. You can just go and go and go. Yeah. I certainly do. But you brought up an important word, peace.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny? To have the place where we're not fearful, there's got to be peace.
Yeah.
And that just resonates with me. There's a peace that comes when you finally decide to face those fears, to say no to being frozen in your tracks by those fears.
Right. Wow.
It might be scary, but you don't learn to swim unless you jump in the water, and you got to let go of the side of the boat or the pool. You just got to do it.
Yeah.
There's certain things you've
I
got
like
to
that.
do to get from point A to point B in this life, and to get past your fears.
Yep.
You've got to face them, and you've got to take things as they come, one day at a time. Absolutely.
Amen. Well, I knew there was a reason we keep you around, Ness. Answers like that. Answers like that. Well, great answers tonight, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. I think everyone answered that one. And so next one, before we move on to part 2. So the last question in the section part 1, in your context, what might truly feel alive mean? In your context, what might truly feel alive mean? And I'll go first. It's such a great question. So what does truly feel alive mean to me? I think it very much ties into this series that we're talking about of living in gratitude. For me, it's avoiding the dark paths. It's enjoying the things that I do have rather than thinking about what I don't have. In terms of being with Jen and enjoying our relationship and our marriage, it's living in the moment and just delighting in every freaking second of the time that we have, and not being worried about, we don't know how long we have. Nobody knows the answer to that. And sometimes it's difficult, but to not focus on that, but just breathe in every day that I get to be with this wonderful, amazing heart and mind that she has. I know she doesn't like it when I, say stuff like that, but it is just true. It's in the context of answering the question in the way that I answer it. It's just the best example that I can think of. And if you want me to answer in context of myself, not referring to someone else, I truly feel alive when I'm loving myself first, God first, myself, and then other people. And I'm spending time in that. And again, I haven't arrived, but I'm working towards that. I would say I'm closer to that than I ever have been. And it makes me feel alive. It makes me feel enjoyment in life. I'm not as paralyzed by the things that I would be fearful of or the challenges that this life brings. I'm just at the beach, enjoying the sound of the waves, listening to the seagulls call, enjoying the sun on my face, feeling the water on my toes. It just is living a life of enjoyment and not as focused on the negative things or the possibilities of what could happen that would take anything away from me. That's the best answer I have. That truly, that's what I feel about truly feeling alive. Anyone want to go next on this one?
I'll go next.
All right, Jen, in your context, what might truly feel alive mean?
So I put this in the chat, but I'll read it and just add to it. For me, full self-acceptance and self-love that's steady, consistent, and doesn't waver. I find that when I'm in that place, my capacity to love others multiplies to the umpteenth degree. And like what you said, Jason, I want to love people to my fullest capacity. I really do. I think it's what God calls us to do. And I feel like there's been times where my own insecurities and hiccups with this self-acceptance thing, it throws a wrench in the works. And I hate it. I absolutely hate it. Wow. So there's my answer.
Thank you, Jen. I love your quote. Full acceptance and love that is steady, consistent, and doesn't waver. I find when I'm in that place, my capacity to love others multiplies, and I want to love people to my fullest capacity. Honestly, Jen, that is beautiful, and I agree with you 100%. When we love other people It is the most giving thing we can do for ourselves. And it's not out of selfishness. I'm just saying that when you love other people and you're kind to them and encouraging to them and supportive of them, it gives back every time. Whether it's God or whether it's universe or whether there's nothing, which I do not believe, but let's say there's nothing out there, that it is what they say. It's a random collision of molecules, and we're an insignificant speck in a multifaceted, long, ever-expanding universe. It doesn't matter when it pays you dividends that you could not earn in any other way. When you help someone who's hurting, when you smile at someone who has a look on their face like they're having a bad day and they smile, even the faintest of smiles, it lights you up. It is the passing on of the concept of love. And as Ness said earlier, it's not just within Christianity. There's lots of religions that focus on a lot of these things that we're talking about. It's in society itself, the idea of being loving, the idea of doing for others. It is so important, in my opinion. And thank you, Jen. That was a great comment. Okay. What about you, Naz? In your context, what might truly feel alive mean to you?
It means not just living in the moment, but appreciating the moment, being thankful for what you have. There's a lot of sensation of being alive when you're thankful for what you have.
Lovely.
I think so anyway.
Yeah.
That's what it means to me.
That's good.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Glenn?
Yeah.
What might truly feel alive mean to you, sir?
Well, I knew what Sandra was going to say, and I went and asked her the question, which was, what might truly feel like. She said, when I go to the desert. There you go. It was a no-brainer answer because I knew she was going to say it, but because watching those videos, and that guy said it's just surreal. So are a lot of things.
Yeah.
And obviously, I see things differently from you guys. You might say that God is surreal and all that stuff. But for me, it's what truly feel alive means is when you go somewhere and just the sheer awe of it reduces you to nothing, where you have no control. You are so emotionally taken down that you just, I'm feeling it. Yeah.
There it goes.
There it goes. It takes you to nothing. I know that sounds strange, but you just cry and you don't stop. It is just so, it's incredibly difficult to describe, but it's just like you feel a whole range of things. You feel humility, you feel it's awed, you feel like you're nothing, and you know you're going down. And in that process of going down to nothing, then you're alive.
Yeah.
Yep.
Can anyone relate at all?
Yeah.
Would the word obliterated fit?
Yeah.
But in a good way, not like
not obliterated. It's the feeling that you are insignificant. It's I think that's the word that it is. It's that feeling that really you are nothing. You are so insignificant that it just is emotionally overwhelming. And that's happened to me a few times in quite a few places.
Japan.
And not
Japan?
only once in a Buddhist graveyard. But generally, you never know when it's going to be.
Yeah,
it could be anywhere.
Glenn, when you say, what was the word that you use? Insignificant. Because I know a lot of people hear that word and they think of it as negative.
Yeah.
But
I do.
you're thinking it from a positive, right?
Absolutely. It's nothing. It's not really positive or negative. It's just nothing.
Hmm.
There's nothing else attached to it. See, this is the difficult part of trying to articulate something so powerful.
It sounds
Yeah.
a lot like humility, if I may interject.
Well, I used that word. That was one of the words I used.
Yeah, but it doesn't quite hit it, does it? It's
a
like
combination
even more
of
than that.
things. It's like going to a place where there's no life to feel alive. That's why I relate so much to that quote.
Yeah.
It's like that.
Yeah.
And in that place where there is nothing is when you come alive. And it's paradoxical.
Sure.
Yeah.
So,
Well, if you chose to look at it metaphorically, even, I mean, it's similar to being in a place where you're bereft of anything that you can hold on to, and in that place, to me, the only place to go is to feel alive out of that. I mean, based on the way you're describing it, I've driven through the desert on a car with no name. But I haven't gone out into, certainly not the Sahara Desert, but I've seen movies and stuff. It's not the same as being there. But the idea of insignificant, as Jen pointed out, I have to fight thinking of it in negative terms. But because there is this thing attached to it, it's like Carl Sagan, in his TV series when I was a kid that we all watched, he kept harping on this idea of that we are nothing. We're insignificant. We're insignificant people on an insignificant speck in a vast universe. And that's what it makes me think of. Now I realize you're not Carl Sagan, and I feel like I understand the way you mean it. But to me, I don't feel like we are insignificant in and of ourselves. And that, in my opinion, is part of the problem of people believing that we don't matter. Again, that's not what you're saying. But
I'm saying insignificant in the big scheme of things.
Right. No, I get it. It. I'm just sharing why I have to struggle against it, seeing it as a negative. I have a way easier time hearing you say it in your description than I do Carl Sagan or other people that they use it as a way to make people just feel like, there's nothing to them. There's nothing of value to them in the grand scheme of things. And that's not at all what you're saying. And it certainly isn't what we promote on this channel. We're all worth something, and we may be insignificant in the vast universe if it is that, but it doesn't mean that we're bereft of value. We're still worth something in this world.
If someone said to me about their relationship with God, that they feel something a bit like what I described, I could take that on board instantly. I would say, yeah, I can conceptualize that, no problem at all.
Sure. Well, I know what you mean by it, but they do that within Christianity too. I mean, it's the idea that we've been fighting that everyone's a piece of crap next to God, and He sees us like that, and I will fight that till my dying day.
No, I just mean in your one-on-one, feeling, the emotional connection.
Yeah,
it no matter what it is a connection with something.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Glenn. I appreciate that. I appreciate your thoughts too. It's very meaningful. Okay, everyone answered this question. Did I get everyone on it?
I believe so.
Okay, now part 2. The panel has a task. Put on the table what we believe freedom represents to us. I also have the extras, synchronicity, and death. Chat, please add more from here. It's an open discussion. All right, so this is the task that we have for the time that we have left. Put on the table what we believe freedom is. Anyone have an idea of what freedom is to you? We'll start with that, and then we'll deal with the extras Glenn has put up. What do you believe freedom represents to you? Anyone have a burning desire to jump in the what does Nez say, to wade into the
Hip deep, baby.
hip deep? Hip deep. There you go. What about you, Nez? Why don't, since you're ready to go hip deep, what is freedom to you?
When God gave us free will, that's freedom. When we have the freedom to live and make mistakes and learn from those mistakes, that's freedom. When we can make choices with a sound, clear mind, without being manipulated, without being controlled, or
Right.
letting ourselves be controlled.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean, for people who are believers in Jesus, you want the Lord to control you and to guide you as far as, your behaviors, what, when you pray, how there's a place for that. But I mean, letting toxic influences, negative people, controlling what you think, what you say, who you talk to, where you go. That's what I'm talking about.
Of course. Yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah. It's it's the song, God Take the Wheel. A lot of people really struggle against that. They're the captain of their own ship. I used to really like that poem. I think I still do. The captain of my own ship. I am in control of my own destiny. I have often thought how foolish that seems from a certain perspective, in terms of believing that there's a God. But on the other hand, some of the toxicity of traditional, the religion of Christianity, not the heart of it, not the spirit of true belief, but what in my opinion men have done to screw it up and make it be about control, is the idea that it strips us of the free will in the first place that God gave us, and that we are participants in this life with him. Anyway, just throwing that out there. But for me, I mean, we could do a whole nother broadcast on everything that freedom represents. I think for me, it used to be freedom from my parents. It was for a long time, because I feel like I grew up in a very controlled atmosphere. I feel like every aspect of my life was constantly controlled, and I was living for someone else. I wasn't doing what I felt like was important to me. I always was asking permission to do this and that. Everything that I put in my mouth had to be by permission of my parents. Every friend that I had, or places of course, when you're 4 and 5 years old, totally understandable. I get that. But I've told the story before, and I'm not going to the big long thing, but when I turned 13 years old, and I was excited because I didn't have to continue to order off the child's menu. And I'll never forget when I was ready to order a big boy meal, and my dad's like, no, you just get the child's portion. To me, that wasn't freedom. And then, in school, there were positive things that happened to me going to a private Christian school, but it's living in an atmosphere where people are telling you every day what to believe. Here's what you should believe. Here's what you should think. To me, that's not freedom. And then for me, for a long time, freedom from government control. And I like what Nez said, from the more negative forces, being unmolested by those things. So that's a little background of rather than focusing on freedom, I was focusing on constraint. I very much was thinking about the alternative to freedom. Certainly wanted to have freedom, wanted to be free. And much like Glenn, I had to come to the end, and it happened. The loss of a marriage, my mother dying, both of my grandparents, my dad's my grandfather died first, and then my grandmother a year later, and then in between there, my mom passing away. Interesting that my mom died before my grandmother. She was 92. All that within a 3-year period. It was very, very difficult. But out of that, coming to the end and seeming like I'm just working to pay bills and all of that, I came to an end of myself. Not suicide. I'm not implying that, but just being tired of it. And then out of that came me learning how to be free and what that meant to me. So it became less about what I don't have and more about what I do have. And like I said, I'm still working towards understanding what freedom is to me. And now here more recently, there's been a lot of freedom from the toxic parts of religion. And I know that there's a lot of people that would look at that and that don't know me and don't understand what I'm going through and say, well, you're falling away. And that's okay, because here's the good news. It's not based on what other people think of my beliefs or my faith. My faith is stronger than it ever has been. It's just not in what everyone else tells me to think anymore. And there's a freedom in that for me. So I'm still working on it, still moving towards understanding freedom more, but it's no longer about what I don't have, and it is becoming more what I do have and trying to focus on that. And that ties very much in to living in the moment instead of all these other things. And I'll just say briefly too, Jen was talking about not being able to live in the present, thinking about the past. And I spent some time there too. But for most of my life, I was living for something that might happen in the future. Part of that was being married to a person that I love that loves me. I was very much, it was something I wanted dearly. And I hate that I spent so much time not enjoying my life leading up to that point and thinking that marriage was going to be the thing that once I finally achieve this thing, it's going to make everything better. It's going to make it just clear up all the cobwebs and all the struggle. And that first marriage did the opposite of that for me. But I had to go through that, the deconstruction of having that idol in my life in order to truly be free, letting go of it and starting over from scratch and being open to love in the first place. And then it finally happened. And it's been the most amazing thing that happened. So to capsulize all that, I have nowhere arrived at living in perfect freedom or living in perfect love or living without fear completely 100%. But I'm closer than I've ever been. And it is an exciting journey. And I'm very happy to be headed in a positive direction in that way. Sorry that was so long, but I hope that was meaningful to someone. What do you think, Jen? What do you believe freedom represents to you?
Represents life. I think living, not living in freedom, it's not fully living. Did that make sense? I don't know what I just said. Wait a minute, let me back up. Okay. Ask the question again. My brain just farted.
It says, put on the table what we believe freedom represents to us. What is freedom? What's freedom to you? When you think of the word freedom, what does that mean to you? What is freedom?
I think peace.
Okay.
And kind of coupled with that is love. I can't separate the two.
Okay.
But yeah, definitely peace. When I think of the word freedom, I think of those moments that I've had with you, Jason, when we're praying and I'm all clenched up and then I finally breathe.
Yeah.
And it's like this exhale.
Yes.
And it also makes me think of someone that has their wanting to have such control, whether it's control of other people's perception of you or control over yourself and trying to be perfect, all of those things. I think of somebody just clenching their fist, trying to cling on to it.
Oh, wow.
And then when it comes to freedom, I can't help but feel like it's this open hand.
Yeah.
It's the blood rushing back into your fingers, and you're just letting go in a sense, and not letting go of everything, but you know what I mean?
Oh,
It's the symbolic meaning.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. That was very profound. I think you got it. It seemed like you thought you were struggling at the beginning, but
I was trying to remember my answer I thought of when y'all were talking. I was like, dang it. Okay, I got it. It came back to me. Thank you, God.
Thank you. Thank you, Jen. Appreciate that. All right, Glenn, you're up last on this one. Put on the table what we believe freedom represents to us. Before you answer, I know that this is one of the questions you asked in the chat, and I think you reached out to a few other people and you said, I think, 6 different answers at the time. And it's just interesting to me. It makes sense that when you ask this question, what's freedom, that different people that you ask have all different answers. They see it differently. Freedom means something. It means one thing to one person and another thing to another person. I just wanted to throw that in there. So what does it represent to you, Glenn?
Thinking for yourself.
Wow.
In other words, that you have not control, but you have the capacity that you've been given a brain in that you can think for yourself, and that then allows you to have a mindset and an attitude towards life, and you get to have some say in what you do. And if you stuff it up, you've also been given the gift of an intelligence that you can modify it and make it better.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So I think
beautiful.
So many times when we're supposedly thinking for ourselves, we're not really doing that. We're thinking, what do I have to do to make someone else happy, but not ourselves?
Right. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, very much what Jen was talking about.
Very much so.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. All right. So let's hit on the extras real quick. I also have the extra synchronicity and death. My answer won't be too long, but I feel like synchronicity to me, what it means to me is everything working in congruent ways with other things. So in the context of what we've been talking about, as far as freedom is concerned, the whole series has the word privilege in it. And that in the past was irritating, the idea of white privilege, or we have things so much better than everyone else. And in terms of the West, we probably do, not as it relates to food, according to Glenn. The rest of the world eats a lot better than we do here in America. I'm sure that's true, but to other things, synchronicity to me is similar to balance. And I've said many times that we go too far on one end or the other. I mean, use whatever word you want in political terms and religious terms and whatever. Too far on one end it isn't good. I want to find a balance. So when I'm balanced in my mind, my heart, my body, my spirit, all those ways, that's synchronicity to me, and it means everything. It's what I'm hoping for, moving toward. I've had enough of chaos. I've had enough of things being out of whack, and feeling, as I said, about the freedom of living in a place of the negative aspect instead of the positive, or living in the possibility of a better future rather than enjoying the moments that I have right in front of me. Very different place. What do you think about synchronicity, Jen?
Synchronicity. I don't know. Can you come back to me?
Sure. That's synchronicity.
What about synchronicity? I experience that quite often. And I find synchronicity happens when you're in tune, when you're in the moment with what you're experiencing especially with somebody else. I think synchronicity is a fruit of being spiritually in tune and listening and paying attention, and again being in the moment.
All right.
That's good.
Short and sweet. Glenn, synchronicity.
It's not one of my words. I'd say basically when everything aligns and is in harmony, and where one, but I believe that it can't happen where one's trying to control the narrative.
Right.
Beautiful.
The more, if you're trying to direct the universe, things won't sync.
Right.
At all. They don't. It just doesn't work, in my opinion.
Okay.
So just be free. Let it just relax. Take a deep one, as Jen said, and allow the synchronicity to come by itself.
Okay.
That's what I see in that. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you.
Beautiful.
All right. Last one, and then we'll be at our last.
I was going to answer because I didn't answer before.
Jen.
Oh, that's okay. No, it's kind of similar to what you guys have said. I think of the times that we are clenched and trying to have control over all these different things in ways that we're not created to have that kind of control. I kind of picture someone, when you do puzzles and you get this piece that's like, it looks like it's going to fit, and you're frustrated and you like shove it in there and you're like, this will work. Yeah. But it obviously doesn't. There's like some cracks. You're like, God dang it.
That's good.
Synchronicity, I think, are when those pieces of the puzzle of your life click together seamlessly and effortlessly. And it's not necessarily through you forcing it, through you trying to have that control. And like Glenn said, the letting go. Yeah. There's been things that have happened in my life that I didn't force them or try to control them to happen. They just did. And it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's breathtaking. And for me, it just, I don't even know. There aren't even words. Right. It puts me in a place of being very, very grateful to God. And it also baffles me as to when I have these experiences, they're so profound. And I don't understand. And I get very frustrated at myself at times when the anxiety of things that I don't know are going to happen and I'm trying to control it and I get all clenched up again. And there goes the hand clenching up and white knuckling again. And I'm trying to shove that puzzle piece into a place it doesn't go. Right. They're two very different things. But when I think of synchronicity, I think of that, things clicking together. Sometimes they have no correlation.
Yeah.
But in the grander scheme of the picture of your life, they do.
Yes.
So that's
great
my answer.
Analogy. Yeah. I mean, while you were talking about the trying to force fit the puzzle piece, it was perfect. It was really, really good. Thank you. Okay. The next one is death, and I'll go first on this one. When I even see the word death, obviously the first thing that pops into mind is physical death. And as a person that believes that this is not the end to life, in the past, there definitely was a focus on, again, this living for the future, living in this possible world that I've never seen, that people tell me exist. I'm not saying I don't believe it in anymore or anything like that, but what has happened is I'm way more focused on the here and now. Doesn't mean I'm not at all mindful of things to come. I mean, we've talked about the term, or I've mentioned the term before, that has gone around in Christian circles. You're so heavenly minded, you're no earthly good. And I've met people like that. You ask them how they're doing, and it says, well, I'll be doing better when the Lord comes back. Well, sure, of course. But the Bible, if you believe it's true, there are commands all over the place, especially when the Israelites were in captivity, in answer to how they're supposed to live. It said, have families, make gardens, build your homes, enjoy life as much as you can while you're in captivity. And in my opinion, we're in captivity, all of us, in some ways. And I don't want to be in that place. So for me, living a life for something in the future that's going to come is my own form of captivity. It is a prison of my own making. And then metaphorically, death happens all the time, and it should happen in nature. Leaves on trees, in the fall when it gets cold, the leaves shrivel up and die, and then all the trees are bare. And then we're on the brink of spring right now as we speak here in America, at least. And you have all the budding flowers, and you have new growth. Very much within nature, the way that it represents this idea of death leading to a better life. I think it can be a beautiful thing. So for me, death means to me, I'm choosing to look at it for the sake of this discussion, metaphorically, in the death of the way things used to be, so that something new can grow. And to me, that's a beautiful thing. The death of the way I used to believe certain things, and now it has created an openness to thinking about things from a different perspective. And it very much for me ties into the idea of freedom for me, freedom from toxicity and from things that make me a slave to other men's opinions of what belief should mean or what faith should mean. It certainly isn't ignoring everything I've learned before. It's factoring in that, but also thinking, look, nobody has the answers to everything. Person can say, I know everything there is to know about the Bible or about faith or belief or any religion. I know all there is to know. I just think that's ignorant. I think we don't know everything. We have faith, and faith is a beautiful thing. It's one of the best things. But I'm just in a place where it's like I'm a kid again in some ways, and I just want to learn, ask questions and wait for the answers. So death is a rebuilding in my mind. What do you think, Naz? What does the word death represent to you?
Death to me, other than the physical
Right.
Ceasing of function of your mortal flesh,
Right.
death is also a transition point when you leave behind your mortal coil and move on in your spiritual form. And death can also mean separation from God, separation from things that are most important. It can really leave you in a place when some people say they feel dead inside. I think of that, and I think they must feel no connection to anyone or anything, and that's a rough place to be when you're surrounded by a world that's very much alive, and there are people with spirits all around you. There's animals and plants and the earth itself all around you. As far as this pertains to this particular write-up tonight, I don't think death is something. I wish Glenn would add a little more context to this. Glenn, do you have any specific point for this being at the end of this write-up? I want to make sure I'm covering what you're wanting to know.
Sure. Well, the word death came from someone who considers death from this life as freedom. Now, obviously, in cases where there's serious health issues, you're in a terrible situation, death is freedom. But this is freedom from life. That was the concept that this was brought up. In other words,
okay.
The next life is better, so therefore, why wouldn't I want to die now? I mean, and it was mentioned to me that this person's seen other people who think the same way, and they're quite close in the religious groups around that are quite close to, on the skirts of TSL. And I'm thinking, okay, if you are, the question I had in my head was, how can religion or God stuff poison someone that much that they would be thinking that the gift of life that they've been given is worth foregoing now to get out of it? And that's one that you guys can answer, because I can't fathom it at all. I can't perceive in my mind how someone could be so corrupted to get to that place. But it obviously happens because they are in that place. So please feel free to comment.
I understand. And corruption of their spirit is a pretty accurate term spiritually of what's going on. I would also say people who feel that way to the point where they don't want to carry on in the gift of life and to move on through death and forego that gift, that privilege, that freedom to be alive. I can't fathom that either. But I believe the people who go there are very hit, very hurt, very banged up, damaged people that have yet to find that way to bounce back from that and recover from that. Not everybody who needs help reaches out for it, sad to say.
Yeah.
So that's my thought on that.
Okay. Fortunately, I can say that I've never felt totally dead inside, but I certainly have had my moments where I felt parts of me were dead. For me, it ended up being an illusion. It was the death of something, and it had to happen in order to make room for new life. The perfect example, I talk about it, probably everyone's tired about it, but it's the perfect example is my first marriage compared to my second marriage. One was very miserable, and I take responsibility for the way that I perceived it. Probably would have been a lot better if I had been the person I am now back then, but that is impossible. And frankly, I would have got in that marriage in the first place if I was me back then. This version of me, I would have seen the red flags and run quickly, far and fast. But it's not about that. I essentially agree with what Nez said. To me, it maybe isn't the only part I disagree with. I mean, not totally, but the part I would add to it, I think that's a better way to say it, is that, in my opinion, in terms of what's pushed out there and the discrepancies and the conflicts and the infighting within the Christian world, at least in ministries, and people stabbing each other. You guys have heard me talk about this a lot. I understand why a person would be confused or feel difficulty in embracing the life that from the outside it looks like, well, you have this eternal life, this freedom in Christ, and all the things that you hear people giving lip service to, but they're admitting, when you really break it down, they're admitting that they don't feel all of that. I agree with Nez. A lot of people don't seek help when they should, but who do they go to? I mean, there are people out there who would say, "Oh, well, read your Bible more." Well, that's great, but sometimes people need a little bit more than just reading their Bible. They need someone to do what Jesus said. If someone's thirsty, give them water. If someone's hungry, give them food. If someone is naked, give them clothes. If someone's in prison, visit them. If everybody was doing what they're supposed to be doing according to Christ, it would be a lot less people feeling dead inside. A lot less people would be able to embrace the brighter sides of faith and belief, in my opinion, than they are. And that's an indictment on Christianity in general, and I'm a part of it. I have been a part of it. I have been focused in the past more on doctrine and dogmas in some cases, rather than living a practical life as a believer in Christ and doing what he said to do. Very clear. If you love the Father, do what he says to do. He says to love one another. He says to pray for those that persecute you. Pray for your enemies. And I finally get it. And I hope that this revolution that seems to be happening right now, where people are taking a second look at religion in general, and not just getting rid of it, not getting rid of everything they've learned, but to have a fresh perspective. Hopefully that'll help someone out there. Okay. Oh, Believe said exactly, Jason. Too many law thumpers and no love uplifters. Well, that's beautifully said. And Believe, I forget what scripture it is. You're going to remember right away when I say it, but it's the one that you have posted several times in the chat about what love should be and the absence of hypocrisy. I'm just so tired of it. I'm tired of people telling other people how to live and they're not living it themselves. And they're not living in love. That's exactly what all these broadcasts to me are about. And this whole series is about living in gratitude, all the privileges that we have, focusing on them. It very much is a call. Tonight's the privilege of freedom. Biblically speaking, we have freedom in Christ. We can talk more about what that is, but a lot of people are not living in freedom. So either they don't understand what freedom is, or they're feeling oppressed in some way. There's a lot of oppression out there. And it could all be cleared up if everyone was being the salt and light and the city set on a hill that Jesus said that we are. So again, I'm saying that to myself too. This is definitely something I want to walk in and not just say. So there's that. Did everyone answer the truly feel alive question? I think we did. And then we answered the death and synchronicity. Okay, last question, and we'll say goodnight to everyone. This has been a really, really great conversation. And so the last question we have is the basis of your life that you live to seek to live, or don't seek at all? The basis of your life, is it that you live to seek to live, or don't seek at all? What do you say, Jen? Live to seek to live, or don't seek at all?
It's a great question, but it's a tough one too at the same time.
Yeah.
I think there have been times I have lived to seek. Perfect example, like, conspiracies and, hidden deceptions and all that kind of stuff. There was a season where I just was obsessed with it.
Sure.
And I was living to seek. Seek to live. I think I more am on that other side of seeking to live, but not completely. It's not all or nothing. Right now I'm living, and I am still a seeker, but it's not what my life is based on.
Right.
And I have found that through the seeking, in all kinds of areas, even like my relationship with God or my relationship with myself, it has brought about more life, more living in the present, more loving, but I have times where I take a break and I'm not seeking, but maybe I'm thinking about it. I'm like, well, maybe I kind of feel like intrinsically I am a seeker. And part of that is I'm a very curious person. And so I'm always pondering things and thinking about things, and it's a part of my personality. So it's just a part of me. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I know I take breaks.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that made sense.
No, it made total sense.
Okay, good.
I get it. So for me, it's a mixture of the first two. Live to seek to live. And Glenn and I have discussed this at length, and it's an ongoing conversation. I'll let Glenn, but he can answer for himself. But I think seeking is intrinsic to understanding the world that we live in, and diving inside ourselves and learning who we are. I think it is a fascinating thing. I can't imagine someone that didn't seek anything out, that didn't look for things. It very much is part of who I am. I've been a curious person since I was a child. I think a lot of children are born curious. They're born into a new world that they have no idea what things are. Why is the sky blue? What's that big puffy thing up there? And why does it sometimes grow dark and bring water down on us? Why is the grass green? Of course, when they hear that there's a God, who is God? Who is he to me? Who is Jesus? You know, what is friendship? I mean, these are all things that a child is just wide-eyed. And I think that very much relates to what Jesus says, that we must be like children to enter the kingdom of heaven. It's this idea of being wide-eyed and being teachable and sitting at the feet of Jesus and being open to learning and not thinking I've learned everything there is to know, being curious, being willing and malleable like clay in the potter's hands. It is all about seeking. It is all about learning and growing and changing. So for me, it's the first two. I live to seek and I seek to live, meaning I want to live in love. I want to live my best life, to use a very popular phrase from Joel Osteen. It's just wanting to be, I keep saying salt and light because it's so meaningful to me right now. It's especially meaningful to understand. I feel like I understand what that means. I recently changed my Facebook icon to a lighthouse. I have always liked lighthouses, and Jen shares that affinity with me. And we may at some point, I forget how many lighthouses there are in Michigan, but one of these times we go to Michigan, we might at least visit a couple of them. It'll probably take a long time and probably take a month to visit every one of them. But I have an interest in that. I just think they're fascinating concepts, especially on, okay, I'm not going to go there, but in order to see a lighthouse, let's just say this, that, the lighthouse has to be up there and it directs ships. It helps people know where they're supposed to go. Well, it very much ties into Scripture and what we're told to be. You are a light unto the world, and Jesus is the light of the world, and he passes that torch literally and figuratively onto us, and we are supposed to be that. So I strive to be a lighthouse, a prism. If you've ever been inside a lighthouse, they use mirrors. And obviously there's a light source of some kind, and they use the mirrors to refract the light and to direct it and point it out to where it needs to go. And that's who I want to be. I want to be a light to the world. It can be a dark place. It's not totally bad everywhere. There are good things in the world. Mm-hmm. I just want to represent Christ in the best way I know how. But even without that, even if you're not looking at it from a religious perspective or a spiritual perspective, it's just the idea of being loving to others. There's so much negative. There's so much hate. There's so much bigotry and all these negative emotions that don't serve any good purpose. In my opinion, you don't have to be a religious person in order to understand the concept of being kind to people. Being loving to people. That's who I want to be. So I very much relate to the first two simultaneously, if that's at all possible. Live to seek and seek to live. All right. What do you think, Naz? Live to seek, seek to live, or don't seek at all?
First, I want to say Undertaker Wolfman wanted to say hi to Starling Swallow.
Oh, hello.
All right.
Oh, I said hi to him in the chat.
yeah,
if he scrolls up, I said hey.
I just thought I didn't know. I didn't know. I'm making jewelry while I'm talking with you all tonight.
Gotcha.
So
yeah. Wolfman, if you look up where you tagged me, where you said, "Hey, how are you?" I said, "Hey, Wolfman, above you."
Yeah.
And then I asked you some questions, and you didn't respond, so I wasn't sure if you missed it.
Yeah. Sorry about that, Undertaker. We try not to ignore anyone. So yeah, just scroll up there, but we're very glad that you're here. We don't ever want to ignore you. So I apologize if you feel like that. You're very welcome. So hopefully you.
Okay. Now to answer the question. I feel between seeking to live and just letting things happen and not seeking at all. And I say that because Scripture tells us to seek ye first the kingdom of God
Yeah.
and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. And
Mhm.
in my experience, that is 110% true.
Yeah.
If I'm seeking the Lord first, then everything else pretty much comes with minimal effort. Sometimes there's work involved. Sure, I've got to hold up my end and do things,
Sure.
certainly. But things just happen. That synchronicity happens. Things you need suddenly come about.
Yeah.
A word you need to hear, a person you haven't heard from. If I'm putting God first, He's true to His word to me,
Right.
and everything else just falls into place. And then I can actually have time where I don't have to do anything but just let things happen.
Right.
So there you go.
Beautiful. Thank you, Nez. Appreciate your thoughts. And last but certainly not least, let's hear Glenn's perspective. And my guess is it's going to be a little bit different, certainly probably than mine, but that's okay. That's the beauty of a channel that loves to have discussions. We can all have different perspectives. Glenn, is the basis of your life that you live to seek to live, or don't seek at all?
Yeah, well, this one's obvious, isn't it? Otherwise, I'm going to be very inconsistent. And that I hope I'm not. In the base level, everyday life existence, if you want me to assign percentages, 5 to the first one, 5 to the second, and 90% to the third one.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be
Nice.
somewhere where you would be thinking I'd be sitting, I would imagine. Close, anyway.
Sure. Yeah.
It's like I've just continually found that the less you seek, the more you get.
Yeah.
It just seems to work. I know you talk about the Bible, but that's not relevant to me.
Sure.
Philosophically, I've demonstrated this. It's like writing TSL. It's like seeking a topic. It doesn't work. If you go out into the cosmos by a convoluted method that I do, you go out with no mind at all. And the thoughts come, you go out with preconceptions. You don't leave room for stuff to come in because you're not there to direct it. Something else directs it. So you could say God directs you. And I would say, well, that sounds quite reasonable. But I was just thinking when we use the word seek, it's just like, do I seek people's approval? No. I wouldn't. The thought of it is sort of, why would I do that?
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
No. When you seek someone else's approval, that's what you're living by. I mean, and it's kind of what we've been talking about for quite a while, at least over the past couple of months. I have discussed, you mentioned the Bible, so we have talked a lot about that and the idea of, if you don't read it for yourself, if you don't look at things for yourself and you're just accepting what someone else believes, then you're at the mercy of thinking that person, first of all, really, really cares about what they've read and that they have done an exhaustive search and that they understand it and it's good enough, it's understandable enough for you to take it on board. I find that's troublesome at best. Very much, as you said earlier, thinking for yourself, I think is extremely important. And the beauty of it is there's, in my mind, there is some truth to what you're saying. This relationship with Jen, I was not seeking it. I'd given up. So I can't hear your opinion of it and say, oh, that's patently ridiculous on its face. I very much still, for me, I am a seeker. I like finding things out. But I also appreciate and understand, use the idea of kind of emptying yourself and seeing what the universe has to offer. And I love that. I love your process of doing that. To me, ideas just come to me, and I didn't sit there and think about it. I didn't think, well, I need need this or that to happen. Sometimes that the best ideas for short stories or poems or plays have just kind of popped into my mind. That very much to me, I wasn't seeking it. It just happened. So I can't say that it's not part of it, but for lack of a better word, to label myself someone that doesn't seek at all, I would say it's like 40, maybe 40% of each of the first two at least, and maybe 20% of the other. Did I do the math right? Yeah, I did. Okay, great. All right. Fascinating topic tonight, guys. Did everyone answer that last question? I think we did.
Oh, yeah.
All right. I like to think that one of the key words to freedom is availability. When one is truly available to life, many doors just tend to appear in response to being open. Now, I agree with that 100%. Just like riding the horse with no name, the doors need no name. As always, the onus is on you to open them if you are brave enough. Thanks for coming over the last 4 weeks. To all, go well. Good night. And it ends with a quote: never say I regret, always say I learned. And that is a Moroccan proverb. Wow. Well, there we go. Ending with a bang with the privilege of freedom. Keepsake, a horse with no name. Remind everyone that the links to 2 short videos are in the description, as well as 4 links. The first is a song to Keepsake by Audiomachine, and the other 3 are for the much beloved song, at least with Glenn and myself, The Horse with No Name by America. Please give those a chance. And also, lastly, if you have a chance, read the article. Link is in the description, on which a lot of the tonight's topic was based. And that's the Alan Watts, Freedom, Fear of Love, Meaning of Freedom, rather. Okay. Well, this has been great, everyone. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. And next week, from what I've heard, we're going to hear from Nez. She's waited patiently in the wings for her opportunity to do a write-up. I don't know what she's going to write on, but I'm sure the universe will provide.
Oh, Cripps, at last, a revelation. I've been waiting for this for so long.
She's
I
not
have to run
laughing.
and tell Sandra, Coco.
Coco, yeah, because Coco really cares about the universe.
Oh, he cares. Thanks.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so everyone, you have that to look forward to for next Sunday at 7 p.m. Nez will be doing the write-up for us, and then we'll let you know what's coming next. Probably it will be Jen or myself that does one. So just because of what Glenn said, I will not seek to discover a topic. I'll just see what is provided. We'll see how that works. Okay. Before we just close up, I just want to appreciate everyone that has shown up in the chat. Every one of you is important. We appreciate you being here. We had fewer people. I'm sure that's because of the change of time. So might have been a little shaky for a couple of us, but I think this worked out a lot better, at least for me with the new job and things like that. So thank you for being understanding, and we look forward to seeing everyone next Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I hope everyone has a good week, and I hope this series has meant something to someone. It is our pleasure to have these discussions, and if you can take anything from it, we hope that you do apply it to your life if you can, or if you have a desire to do so. Our desire is not to tell people how to live, but just to bring things into the discussion, and hopefully within that discussion, someone might find something valuable to take away from it. So hopefully we've done that. All right. So good night, everyone. And we'll pass it along to Jen. Jen, take a minute to say good night to everyone. If you have any closing comments about the topic or anything else you'd like to talk about, please do.
Yeah. This was an amazing show. Gosh.
Yeah.
Wonderful write-up, wonderful questions. And I loved the balance between the chat discussing things and sharing
Yeah.
their thoughts with us. It seemed perfect this evening.
It
So I
was
just
perfect.
really thank you guys in the chat for sharing. We are not here to just listen to ourselves talk. We really want to hear y'all's thoughts, even if they differ from ours. So thank you so much for just being a part of it. And Glenn, thank you for the write-up. We hope you guys have a fantastic week, and we cannot wait for Nez's write-up, and we look forward to seeing you next week. God bless. And if y'all have any prayer requests, leave them in the chat for us if it's not too personal.
Perfect.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Jen. Glenn, take a minute to say goodbye. If you have any closing comments, either to tonight's broadcast or to the series that you have written, please do. Take a minute.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone, for turning up. I know the time was a bit of a change. Very much looking forward to having a rest. And there was a show that used to be on here. It must be a long time ago. And the closing comment was always, "May the good Lord smile upon you until next time we meet." There you go.
Oh, wonderful.
I even remembered it. How's that?
Wow. I think that says a lot. Obviously, it meant something to you for it to still be knocking around in that noggin of yours.
That's the freedom you get when you can think for yourself.
Wow. I love it. I love it. Fantastic. Thank
That's
you.
a good quote right there.
Thanks, guys. Good night.
Thank you, Glenn. And it was a fantastic series. Thank you for all the work that you put into it and for being open to what the universe gives you to talk about, and for the music and for the thoughtful expressions and questions and conversation. Definitely appreciate that. All right, Nez, if you would find ma'am, please close us out. If you have any closing comments of any kind, please make them be about the show tonight or anything else you want to say. Please take the time to do so.
Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Thank you to my distinguished co-panelists. And thank you especially to Glenn for a fantastic write-up again. What a wonderful discussion. And I really enjoyed being a part of it and seeing all the people interact and take part of the discussion as well. Remember that the time has changed from 8 p.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Make a note of that. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the good Lord provides for me as far as a write-up. So I'm going to see what happens. I don't know what we'll talk about yet, but I know whatever it is, we're going to have a great discussion, and I hope you'll be there to be a part of it. Thank you again so much. Keep an eye out. I might have Jen join me in Nez Studios again this coming week, so keep an eye on the notifications.
Woohoo!
And I'm looking forward to having more fun with art with Miss Jen. It is so much fun. Thank you, everybody. Have a blessed and safe weekend, or rest of your weekend and the start of your week. Hope it all goes well. And God willing, we'll see you all here on next Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on True Story Live. Good night and God bless.